It was clear that President Zelensky was upset that Ukraine is not getting what he thought it should be getting, but. As far as U.S. politicians, U.S. decision makers are concerned, there is really very strong support for Ukraine.
The NATO summit, of course, is now drawn to a close in Lithuania after 2 days. G7 leaders signed a package of long-term security guarantees for Ukraine. Rishi Sunak says it marks a new high point in international support for Ukraine. But President Zelensky has been critical of what he sees as delays to making Ukraine a member of NATO. President Joe Biden agreed.
I think it's a powerful statement of our commitment to Ukraine as it defends its freedom today and as it rebuilds the future. And we're going to be there as long as that takes.
Meanwhile, also at the summit, Defence Secretary Ben Wallace has made the headlines, saying that people want to see gratitude. We just heard Carol mimic the comment there. We're not Amazon was the reference to shopping lists provided for help that Ukraine needed. The Prime Minister was asked about it in a press conference this afternoon. Let's speak to Elisabeth Braw, though. Joins us from Washington. She's a resident fellow at the American Enterprise Institute, where she focuses on defence against emerging national security challenges. What's the mood over there? Elisabeth, should President Zelensky have been a little bit more grateful? Did he speak out unnecessarily?
Yeah, it is a sign of the times we live in when a defense secretary feels he has to point out that we are not Amazon. But it was clear that President Zelensky was upset that Ukraine is not getting what he thought it should be getting. But as far as U.S. politicians, U.S. decision makers are concerned, there is really very strong support for Ukraine, and that's both because politicians, decision makers on both sides of the aisle want to support Ukraine, but also because the people who are opposed to Ukraine are not the sort of people opposed to helping Ukraine, I should say, are not the sort of people you want to associate with. It's sort of an odd collection of people on the far left and the sort of far libertarian right, and it's not a particularly attractive group, and it's indeed also very small. So for both, I think, moral or ethical reasons and policy strategy reasons, I think the support for Ukraine remains very strong. In Washington.
Okay, in Washington, but what about the American public? We know that typically polls suggest that they may not be as pro-continued support in terms of weaponry, defence spending towards the war than perhaps some of us here in the UK are. How are the American public feeling about continued support?
They are pretty much going along with it, and I think that is because it's not that the support for Ukraine is not harming them at the moment. If there were to come a point where their prosperity or their well-being were being affected by the support for Ukraine, then it might shift. And for example, if there were to be a situation where the US had to receive the same proportion of Ukrainian refugees as a country like Poland is, then it may be different. But times are pretty good in the US. Maybe the only big concern is climate change, but that's a completely different issue. But other than that, times are pretty good. Prosperity is not suffering for the most part, and so I think that makes people accept military aid to Ukraine and indeed financial aid to Ukraine, because you can have both at the same time. You can have good times at home or pretty good times at home and do the right thing.
Yeah, he certainly went down very well at the NATO summit in Vilnius today. He made a big speech, said that everyone must work together on the big issues. Chants of USA ringing out at the end.